It is a loaded desk here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, as we've got before me the two gentlemen of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, Sean Green along with Ryan Kramer. They do absolutely amazing work. I know that they were taking a look at a lot of the ancillary football leagues last season, and now they are here in studio to help me break down the XFL, along with our good friend Mark Drumheller, who's going to be joining us via Skype. He does amazing work at Yahoo Sports, and gentlemen, it is great to have you aboard. Thank you.
How dare you call it ancillary? This means more to us. This is the XFL.
Well, when there's no other football leagues to compare to, it becomes primary. We ran into Derek Stevens, owner of the Circa, outside there, and he goes, "You're going on VSiN. What are you talking about?" I go, "We're talking about football." Sure, some might say it's not the professional National Football League, which we all love, minus the results of the Super Bowl, of course. But why not just transition to the next professional league, the Extreme Football League with the XFL? Again, if it's football and you can bet on it, how do you not get involved?
And there's actually some notable players. Unlike some of these other leagues that we've seen, someone like a Josh Gordon is going to be suiting it up in this one. I think that is going to be very fascinating to take a look at. And we'll start first, and we'll lead off with you, Mark, on this. What are some of the rule changes that are involved with the XFL that we typically don't find in the NFL? Because I do think that these are important for gauging when it comes to handicapping angles.
Yeah, especially with totals. I think, one of the things that we look at is the clock is going to be running outside of the last 2 minutes in each half, first half and at the end of the game. So they do that to kind of speed up the game. Also, a quicker play clock in between plays, 35 seconds. What we've seen in these ancillary leagues, as you called them before, is that shortened play clock can really cause a lot of problems for offenses early. Communication early in the season's a little bit tough. So sometimes that causes more delays than actually speeds up the game. But, one of the main things is after the touchdown, they don't kick point after touchdown. You get opportunity to go for 1, 2, or 3 points. You get the ball at the 2, 5, and 10-yard line. So, in the first iteration of the XFL, we saw some of the better offensive teams that were more aggressive really utilize that and try and go for 3 to get some extra points on the board. So, for us bettors, the back door is even bigger with the 3-point extra point.
Yep, and I still remember watching this a few years ago from the XFL back when it was there in 2020, just before COVID unfortunately shut down that league, and it felt like nobody had no idea what they were doing in terms of those extra points. Everyone was just like, "Oh, we're going to go for like 2 or something like that." And they had no plays that were drawn up for it. Did you guys notice the same thing when you guys were taking a look at the XFL a few years ago? Because that was a league in which we saw a lot of unders, and it felt like the coaching staffs had no idea what the heck they were doing.
Well, you're talking to someone who had we're talking about someone who had roughneck fever here. So, but yeah, no, I think just in general, it seemed like at first it was like go for 3, maximize, right? Think like NBA style. They optimize maybe around 2, but even then, it's like the offensive talent is sometimes not there to where really going for it makes sense.
Well, and it's funny. I mean, these, as we've learned through the NFL, even these coaches at a high level, they need a chart, right? And I don't think we've figured out the XFL chart yet, right? Because the coaches, they don't know. They don't know, should I go for 1 or should I go for 2? They don't know that. And then you add a 3-point opportunity that blows the average coach's mind on the professional level, let alone the XFL level, where it's another level for them to figure it out. Although I did look up the 2020 XFL totals, and it seemed like it was 2-2.
Week 1.
Yeah, for week 1. I know normally, at least for like week 1 NFL preseason, the play is like an auto unders, just because like the idea of the defense being ahead of the offense, which I still believe we'll see in week 1 of the XFL. But I think they've set the totals so low, I don't know if I can do an auto under on all 4 games.
I do think that is very important to take a look at, and you do want to be looking at the makeup of some of these teams as well. And something that I did notice, because we were just bringing up the fact that some of these coaches had no idea what in the world that they were doing, is taking a look at the coaches, because you got like Bob Stoops, who's going to be the coach over there with the Arlington Renegades. You've got Wade Phillips coaching up the Houston Roughnecks. Reggie Barlow, he's on the DC Defenders. Terrell Buckley is going to be over there with Orlando. San Antonio as Hines Ward. Rod Woodson is out here in lovely Las Vegas. Anthony Beck for St. Louis. And then Seattle, they've got Jim Haslett. I believe that I got all of them. And I'm going to throw this to you first, Mark, and then we'll go to our panel here at Circa. How much do you take a look at coaching when it comes to the XFL, and which teams do you think might have a little bit of advantage/disadvantage?
Yeah, I think it's really important to look at the coaches. A lot of times, people look at the quarterbacks because they're familiar names, but it's really the coaches. And you want to look at offensive systems that are easily digestible, that quarterbacks can pick up quickly and go out and have a ton of success. And we saw in this league, the first time around, June Jones's offense was a massive success with the Houston Roughnecks, that run and shoot style. He's over in Seattle now with Jim Haslett. I think that translates well. And you kind of see it around the league. So, you look at some of the teams, St. Louis implementing a West Coast offense, obviously a little bit more complex. But that's what I do. I kind of look at this scheme and then the quarterback fit and the pairing and try and figure out, like, hey, out of these teams, which ones have the best opportunity to get up and run into a quick start, because we know they don't have full NFL training camps, even though they're in the hub. But I think, the offensive scheme and kind of the talent around them is a little bit more important than just a head coach.
Absolutely. And I'll throw it to you guys as well. How much do you make out of the coaches? And do you feel like there might be a team or two that has an advantage/disadvantage with these coaches?
Well, Mark nailed it. It's June Jones. He had a plan, an offensive plan, and what we saw last iteration, and most spring leagues, the offenses don't look super prepared to start. So P.J. Walker, Cam Phillips, could that be Josh Gordon? And I'm blanking on the quarterback they're rolling out.
But Danucci.
Danucci, exactly. Another guy who has had a cup of coffee in the NFL, even though his coach was maybe related to him. But yeah, I mean, to me, June Jones having a plan, that matters. I think the Defenders strike me as a team that might have a different type of offensive plan, but they're going to have a plan. So I think when you're handicapping these teams, like, coaching philosophy matters. Short training camp, like, maybe Bob Stoops might know how to get a team more ready than Rod Woodson. That's just me. He has a couple more reps. So I would say that kind of stuff. But certainly the offensive systems matter so much, because offense is already behind defense. So having a plan matters.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm on the Seattle Sea Dragons. That's what we're going with.
Yeah.
They were the Dragons last time. They were like, you know what, we need to go bigger. We're the Sea Dragons this time.
And maybe they just kept thinking people called them the Sea Dragons because it was Seattle, and then it was shortened for Sea, and then it was Dragons. So they just went for Sea Dragons.
Or their offense is just sunk into the sea.
Well, that's also true. And we did a long, some would argue too long bit, breaking down the fact that dragons really don't inhabit the sea traditionally. Again, if you're breathing fire, that's something you do on land or in the air, not underneath water. That aside, June Jones, who's been a guest on our show, you got to like a guy who shows up in the Sports Gambling Podcast. But, again, someone that has a proven experience in spring football in particular at the head coaching level, I think is huge, especially when you look to week one, because, again, maybe Hines Ward is the next, Bill Belichick. We don't know, but it certainly could take him a while to figure it out. So there's a lot of questions. I'm looking to fade guys who are making their coaching debut, at least at the head coach level. So, teams like Seattle and the Sea Dragons, again, still getting used to that term. Those are teams I'm looking to ride, and I'm looking to fade the teams that have head coaches that just have like positional experience, and maybe they end up being great, but I'm going to fade them and then wait to figure it out later.
Yeah, but I think that guy like Anthony Becht is very interesting as well. I've actually done a few interviews with him breaking down college football because he's a guy that he knows his stuff there, and we've seen some of the guys come from the booth and they've actually been relatively solid coaches. I mean, look no further than Steve Kerr. He's certainly panned out on that front. And then we see other guys, they come down from the booth, and it's been an abject disaster to say the least. So that is going to be very interesting to take a look at. And this is a reiteration of the XFL that I think is going to be very interesting. We've got a lot of things to take a look at for week 1. So fortunately, we do have the panel in front of us. Mark Drumheller, who does great work at Yahoo Sports, coupled with the sports gambling podcast gentlemen of Sean Green, along with Ryan Kramer. We're going to be breaking down these teams a little bit more next and taking a look forward to week 1 here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We're talking XFL. We've got 2 men in studio, Ryan Kramer along with Sean Green, who do great work at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And we've got Mark Drumheller via Skype, who does amazing work over there at Yahoo Sports. And let's take a look at these games for week number 1, because something that jumps out to me before we dive into any of the spreads, any of these teams in particular, and the matchups, is that these totals are all pretty much within a very, shall we say, finite window. At DraftKings, they're all between pretty much 35 to 35.5 to 37. What do you make out of these totals all being in really that mid to high 30 range? And we'll start with you, Sean.
Well, I would say they're smart, the guys setting the lines, because previously we saw with the USFL, there was briefly, when they opened up last year, week 1, there were some totals in the 50s, which were insane. As someone who just blindly takes week 1 unders for the preseason NFL or for spring football, now they're making you work for it, right? Because they're making you think. When you're setting these lines in like the 30 to high 30s range, they're making you earn it. I would still, my instinct is to lean auto under for these plays still. But again, they're at least making you think. And I don't think it's going to be an easy cash on the auto unders. Like, honestly, it's probably going to be 2-2 on the over unders or something similar, because they've been smart enough to set the lines at reasonable numbers for spring football.
Yep, I think that is such a big thing. Mark, we'll go to you on this. What do you make out of these totals being significantly lower than what we've seen from things like the AAF, the XFL the first time around? Because I think that Sean just said it very well. These are totals that are significantly lower than we've seen from other of these ancillary football leagues week 1.
Yeah, I thought Kentucky was playing Iowa. I didn't know what was going on. I look at these lines, but then, here we are. But no, it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, they're going to be risk adverse the first week. They're going to take money on. They don't have any problem writing tickets on overs, just because you don't know what the cohesion is going to be. You don't know what the continuity is going to be on the offensive side. Chemistry, familiarity, with your teammates. Could be a lot of penalties. So, we've seen that in these leagues before. So I think they do that. Me personally, I'm not going to, blind bet every under. There's a couple spots that I like, but, I'm not going to just hit every under just because some of these games, some of these defenses might not be that good. And if these offenses are humming, they're going to be able to put up points fast, because the kickoff's a little different too, right? There's only a 3% touchback rate in 2020 in the XFL because, both teams line up at the 35 and 30-yard line on the receiving team side of the field. So, it's good field position for the offenses.
Absolutely. And it's not going to be like the XFL that we saw in 2000 where they were scrumming for the ball, which I personally like to see. Apparently, it wasn't the world's greatest thing for player safety, but I thought it was an enjoyable experience.
No fair kicks.
It's a different time. Different time, Greg. Different time.
Yes, it certainly is. And I will throw this to you as well, Ryan. Just in terms of these totals, how much do you make out of the fact that you can go for 1, 2, or 3 in regards to the total? Because I would think that would help out overs just a little bit.
Yeah, I would imagine maybe 42 not quite as key as it's a crapshoot, right? That's what's beautiful about this. It's week 1 of the preseason. That's why you have to lean under before you go over. That's why you're probably not betting overs until you can see an offense actually complete some passes and look like they can do something. And honestly, if we're talking preseason football, there's still some room to get down into that 31, 32 range. So for me, I'll happily be the guy to say I'll blindly bet the unders. I got to see the offenses do something.
And I think that you bring up something very good, and I'll make this pro tip for hour number 2, VSiN.com/subscribe. You're able to sort these by show and by sport. Keep in mind that the normal critical numbers that you see in football, they might not be withholding here in the XFL, because you can go for 1, 2, or 3, and that means that typically that critical number of 42, 45, that might be when it's all said and done, 44, it might be 46. Who in the heck knows? But you want to be tossing that a little bit more to the side. So I think that is something very good that is brought up there. But let's dive into these matchups just a little bit more, because I do think that they're very fascinating. And it's going to start out here in lovely Las Vegas on Saturday with the Vegas Vipers and the Arlington Renegades. Renegades are a team that they've got one of those experienced coaches. They're a 3-point favorite, and it's going to be in Arlington in this one. And I will lead off with you on this one, Sean. How do you view this game between Vegas and Arlington?
Yeah, I mean, I could see, again, in the same way why you would maybe lean under, you would lean towards the dog for a lot of these, where it's like, hey, no one, there's so many things to figure out. Why not take the free points? I'm going to lean Arlington with Stoops there. I know, and I saw Mark's picks, and he made some great cases for his picks. I think he's on the Vegas Vipers. Kramer's on the Vegas Vipers. A couple of XFL sharps over here. But my case for Arlington is that Stoops, while he's struggled in previous spring football incarnations, I think the fact that he has experience with his OC and with his DC, like having that experience with the coordinators, I think is going to give them the edge. I think I got it at 2.5, but I still like it at 3. So yeah, give me Arlington here, even though it's dangerously close to Dallas, which I would, as an Eagles fan, I would never support. And Mark's a real Eagles fan, just the way he pronounces overs. But yeah, again, I'm going Arlington here. I understand the case with the Vegas Vipers. Again, fun team name, and when in doubt, take a couple free points here. But I think Stoops and his experience with his coordinators, I think, will be enough as far as just like week one hitting the ground running.
And when it comes to college basketball, noted, I can bet on UT Arlington, but SMU is a complete stay away. I have got the memo here, so we've got that covered there. And Ryan, where do you sit on this game? Because I do think that it's interesting to take a look at some of these underdogs week number 1 in the XFL.
Well, and I just, whenever I hear Vegas Vipers, I just think about Ben Stiller and dodgeball coming out doing their pregame warm up. But I mean, to me, I was a Jersey Generals guy in the USFL last year. And what did I see when DeAndre Johnson had to leave the game? Luis Perez came in and turned into one of the better stories in the league. And seeing him as the projected starter here, and that's part of the glory of this league, is that we don't really even know who's going to play. Like this,
I mean, you don't even know the starters for the quarterback in a lot of these situations.
We think we know the rosters, like we see the cut downs, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's just a lot of variance there. But yeah, to me, Luis Perez is a guy who has excelled at the spring football level. I expect him to come in, and granted, last time it was with Mike Riley, a guy who can definitely coach up a quarterback. But I think in this iteration, to me, like what stands out most in this matchup is the quarterback and the experience of Luis Perez. So I love the Vipers here catching whatever you can catch.
Yep, and I will turn it over to you, Mark. What do you make out of this? Because with Arlington, they've got a guy by the name of Kyle Slaughter, and well, you don't want to get slaughtered in very, very many aspects of life.
Yeah, I'm on Vegas here. I just think Stoops in general as a coach in these leagues is overrated. I think you're paying a tax for his name. That really didn't show on the field. They were 2-3 last time around in the XFL when he coached Dallas, and they had one of the best rosters in the league. Now he's got Drew Plitt is the starting quarterback. It looks like it's going to be. This is a guy who's wildly inaccurate, not really great at reading defenses, going up against a Rod Woodson secondary and, a pass rush led by Vic Beasley. So while Vegas, I think, is going to have some holes on the rush defense, I think they're going to be able to force Plitt into mistakes. And that kind of leads into what Ryan was saying. On the other side of the ball, we have Vegas, very efficient quarterback in Luis Perez, right? Doesn't have a cannon for an arm, but he makes all the right decisions. He can move the ball down the field. New Jersey was one of the most efficient offenses in the USFL. And I think that's going to help. And he has some weapons. Martavius Bryant, Geronimo Allison, who spent some time with the Packers, Jeff Bidette, who, spent some time actually with Stoops in Dallas in the previous iteration. So they have some playmakers on offense, but I think, Vegas is going to be able to force a lot of turnovers on defense. I think they're live as a dog here.
Hey, I remember Geronimo Allison from the Green Bay Packers. He was halfway decent, and I believe that Martavis Bryant is also on Vegas as well. That's a guy that you're able to rely upon a little bit more as a wide receiver. He was someone that was with the Pittsburgh Steelers for a few years, so We've got a lot of fascinating guys that are in this league, and we're going to be hitting more of them in the final segment here of this real XFL chatter on the Greg Peterson Experience, because we've got 3 other games to be able to break down. We've got our panel here with the Sports Gambling Podcast gentlemen of Ryan Kramer along Sean Green, and via the magic of Skype, we've got Mark Drumheller, who does great work over at Yahoo Sports. We're going to be breaking down these games for XFL Week 1, trying to give you guys some picks and trying to make you guys some money next here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. I'm sure the gentlemen joining this panel would disagree with that read, as football season is just beginning with regards to the XFL, as we've got Sean Green and Ryan Kramer in studio, and by the magic of Skype, we have got our good friend Mark Drumheller over at Yahoo Sports. And let's take a look at the remainder of these games that we've got coming up for Week 1 in the XFL. And Mark, I'll just go to you because we already broke down Vegas versus Arlington. Which of the remaining 3 games are you looking at the most, whether it be from just a viewing standpoint or from a betting standpoint?
I mean, I'm looking at all of them. That's the beauty of having an 18 league. But Houston is another game that I targeted. I played Houston on the money line, but I mean, I would lay anything under a field goal here. You have Wade Phillips. The defense is going to be solid against Orlando's quarterback Paxton Lynch on the other side. I just think there's a coaching advantage with Terrell Buckley, coaching the Orlando team. And, I think Houston, when you look at them, don't have a great quarterback in Brandon Silvers, but they have a good offensive coordinator, A.J. Smith, 33-year-old bright mind, June Jones disciple. So they're going to be running an up-tempo offense. They got a lot of shifty backs and Max Borgi and Nick Holly and guys like that. So I think they'll be able to move the ball enough to, score enough points to get Houston to win there.
Absolutely, and I will throw that same question to you, Sean. What game are you looking at the most when it comes to Week 1 of the XFL?
No, I mean, I'm with Mark. I'm on Houston, laying the 2.5, laying the 3. Again, to me, it's just a fate of Paxton Lynch as well, who they're going up against. We've seen him fail at so many levels, right? How many times do we have to see Paxton Lynch fail? Again, it's one thing to fail in the NFL. Some would argue I might fail in the NFL, but to fail also at the USFL when you're given the job, and it seems like he's also been given the job here on the in the XFL Week 1. To me, he's just an auto fade. Lot of reasons to be excited about the Houston Roughnecks offense. So, yeah, for me, it's Roughnecks. It's one of my favorite plays. Them and the Sea Dragons, as much as you have to swallow that name there. Those are my 2 favorite plays Week 1.
Absolutely. And Ryan, we're going to kick it over to you. What are you looking for in terms of Week 1 of the XFL?
And again, heartbreaking. Had that Roughnecks future before they canceled the league last time.
Ryan still has the sweatshirt.
I still have the sweatshirt. Didn't get rid of it. To me, the game of the week is Jim Haslett and this Sea Dragons. June Jones, we talked about it. We have Josh Gordon. We have Ben DiNucci, an NFL quarterback. And then we're going against underrated head coach, tons of experience, Reggie Barlow. You might not know him, but he's been grinding away, coaching at the lower levels, head coach. And I think when you look at the matchup, Jordan Tamu stands out in the same way Luis Perez, a guy who has excelled winning football games at the spring football level. Shout out to the previous incarnation of the Battlehawks.
Yes.
I just think this is a game that is probably going to be the highest level football we can see, and it probably going to be contrasting styles between the running shoot of the Sea Dragons and what projects to be a ground attack coming from the defenders. So I'm excited for this one, but yeah, I'm until June Jones' offense proves me wrong, I'm going to ride it.
And I think it's so interesting that the one game that really hasn't been brought up to this point is the Battlehawks and San Antonio. And I will throw this over to you, Mark, because I do think that it is fascinating. It's really the one home underdog that we've got on the board, with San Antonio being a 2.5-point underdog. You've got Hines Ward as a coach over there at San Antonio. So I feel like this might be the biggest wild card team in the league.
Yeah, I like San Antonio here. I played some under. This is the one game I did play the under on, the 36.5. The Alamo Dome is going to be rocking in San Antonio. Nobody's watching the Spurs. They're excited for football. They're going to be out there, and it's going to be loud. They've had success when they were in the AAF. That was one of the best home field advantages in the league. And I think it's going to be a rough environment. And I talked about St. Louis, a little bit overrated because you have A.J. McCarron there. It's a quarterback that everybody knows. But again, running a West Coast offense in a loud environment, right? You have elongated plays. Everybody knows spider, Y2, banana, jet stream, all that stuff. They got to get that into the quarterback in 35 seconds on the road, the first game of the year. I think you're going to see them have a lot of problems offensively. Anthony Beck, first-time head coach. So I like the Brahmas here. San Antonio offensive coordinator Jamie Alonso. He was the guy who was head coach ran the Vipers offense when they were in Tampa Bay, had a ton of success, led the XFL in yards per play. So even though Jack Cohn doesn't get you excited, I think they're going to be pretty efficient on offense and be able to pull the upset.
And Sean, we'll go over to you on this. How do you view this San Antonio versus St. Louis game? Because I do think that with San Antonio, they are the biggest unknown in the league. I know that they've got a guy that I liked back when he was at Louisville in Juwan Pass, and I think that this is a team that they could be a little bit of an upside team if things go right, and things go wrong, they could go very wrong.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I mean, I'm always skeptical of a spring football road favorite week one. But you said, like, when things can go wrong, they can go very wrong. And I think one point I want to get in here is to take a look at the futures market. One of my better plays last year in the USFL was the Philadelphia Stars. I had them to win the championship at like 14-1. And a lot of the pricing was just because people didn't realize, hey, there's 8 teams. There's 2 divisions, right? So the top 2 in each division will make the playoffs. So I wouldn't be surprised if you look at these divisions, if one of them gets super like top heavy, essentially one of the bad teams might be able to get into the playoffs pretty easily. And from there, it's kind of a crapshoot. So I would keep an eye on the future market. But again, I would stay away from any sort of road favorite week one in spring football in general. That's kind of an auto rule here for me.
Ryan, is that a rule for you, or are you willing to dive in on St. Louis?
To me, Jack Cohn is right there with Paxton Lynch, and so while I get it, I think San Antonio. I mean, these are 2 maybe the best fan bases of the last iteration. Certainly in the AAF, the Command. The San Antonio was a fun team to watch, and I think if they can spark that crowd, like you said, maybe they don't care about the Spurs, maybe they're going to come out and there's certainly a couple cities where I think we expect to see pretty lit crowds. San Antonio being one of them, but I'm still going to lean. I'm going to be that sucker that grabs the NFL talent in the quarterback. And so to me, it's Battlehawks, ride or die, caw-caw. And I mean, that's if nothing else, the XFL just gives you a reason to have fun with it. And so, yeah, give me St. Louis.
Well, no.
And by the way, everyone should know this. Like, it's a road dog, but they're starting from the hub and they're flying together on the same plane to San Antonio. So it's like the travel, I don't think you're getting quite the maybe 1.5 to 2 we see in the NFL when it comes to home field edge. But yeah, so I think when you see, I'm the opposite of Sean here. I think when you see a road favorite in a matchup like this, someone knows something about a roster or about something, and so I'm going to lay the point. I'm going to be the chalky guy who follows the point or follows the money and takes the Battlehawks.
But I would say San Antonio and Seattle.
Love the home spot for San Antonio.
San Antonio and Seattle were the 2 places that I felt had legitimately a home field edge. In the original incarnation. And DC to some degree. I'm not.
The beer snake, right?
Yes.
It did have the beer snake.
Absolutely. And we've got about, I would say, 90 seconds or so left here. And Mark, who is your favorite right now in the XFL entering into week one?
Gosh, if I had to pick one team, it would probably be Seattle. Like I said, with June Jones, I think that offense is really set up to have a lot of success. And that's really what wins in these leagues. It's really, teams that are aggressive on offense, that have the type of offense that can be easily adaptable. The players can pick up quick reads, easy stuff like the run and shoot. So I like Seattle if I had to pick one team. But I'm telling you, Vegas is not getting a lot of credit. I did take a stab on Vegas at plus 700 in the futures market because I think, they have a lot of talent on both ends of the ball. I think it might take a little while to gel, but they could be a buy on as the season goes on.
I love it. And keep in mind the VSiN pro tip that I gave out in the last segment. Keep in mind key numbers, not so key when you can go for 1, 2, and 3 in these games. And final minute here, gentlemen, you two joining me in studio, Ryan and Sean. Who's your favorite right now in the XFL?
Well, I mean, I also love Seattle. Again, ride or die with June Jones until he proves us wrong. But if I was going to throw something in there, Reggie Barlow, a lot of head coaching experience, that DC Defenders team could make some noise. Unfortunately, in the same division as Seattle, so my two favorite teams in the same division, but I don't mind grabbing them at plus 750 in the futures market.
I mean, I'm with Ryan. I like Seattle as a team, but I would say anyone that starts like 0-2, I think is interesting in the futures market, right? Because so many of these teams are going to be close. If a team loses their first 1 or 2 games and they're plus 1,500 in the futures market, that's where you can really find some value. So I would say whoever gets off to the slow start is still super interesting in the XFL.
I love it. This was a great panel. Mark Drumheller of Yahoo Sports, along with Sean Green and Ryan Kramer of the Sports Gambling Podcast, joining me to break down some XFL.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.